My parents rang me up, chuckling, to express their gratitude for the wedding gift, their wedding present. They had just sold my apartment, valued at $480,000, from beneath my feet to fund my sister's wedding, which cost $300,000. They informed me I had 30 days to vacate. However, they made one critical error. They overlooked who was secretly covering the mortgage on their own residence. Before I reveal the conclusion of this perfidy, please share in the comments where you're tuning in from. And if you've ever been the dutiful child who's taken for granted, please hit that like and subscribe button. You'll definitely want to witness this. My name is Amani Washington, and I am 29 years of age. My existence is constructed from the foundational principles of code, logic, and refined aesthetics. As a senior UI/UX designer for a prominent technology enterprise in Atlanta, my days are meticulously organized by pressing deadlines, client engagements, and the seamless, orderly progression of problem solving within the digital realm. My condominium in Buckhead served as my personal haven. Every piece of minimalist furnishing, every subdued color scheme acted as a bulwark against the inherent chaos of my family. The very chaos currently bombarding my phone. I was in the midst of a crucial Zoom presentation with a prospective client from California. My screen was actively shared, my voice maintained a professional, measured tone, and I was guiding them through the user flow wireframes for their forthcoming application. Meanwhile, my phone, set to silent, was illuminated with the relentless flashing of incoming calls. My mother's name flashed on the screen. I dismissed it. It was my mother again. I subtly shifted my posture, endeavoring to maintain my focus. As you can observe from this data point, I continued. Then Mother Amani, 10 missed calls. The client, a gentleman by the name of Mr. Harrison, paused. Amani, is everything all right on your end? You seem rather preoccupied. My face flushed. My sincerest apologies, Mr. Harrison. A minor family matter. Kindly permit me to step away for 30 seconds. I activated the mute function on my microphone and camera, snatched my phone from my desk, and retreated to my hallway. In a furious whisper, I stated, Mother, I am in the midst of a critical client presentation. This had better be an absolute emergency. The response I received was not one of urgency, but of uproarious laughter. Giddy, unrestrained laughter, punctuated by the distinct pop of a champagne cork and accompanying music. Amani, my dear, guess what? It was my mother, Denise, her voice brimming with exultation. My sister, Alicia, the 27-year-old darling of the family and social media influencer, shrieked into the receiver, We've done it, girl! We've booked the St. Regis, the grand ballroom. Can you believe it? I pinched the bridge of my nose. My patience has evaporated. All right, wonderful. I must attend to this. No, wait, hold on, my mother interjected, re-engaging with the call. That's not even the best part. It's all thanks to you, sweetheart. Thank you. Thank you so much. You're a lifesaver. A chilling sensation began to spread through my abdomen. Thanks for what? I inquired, bewildered. I didn't authorize any transfers. My mother let out that light, dismissive laugh she employed when she deemed me overly dramatic. Oh, don't be so melodramatic. I've sold your Buckhead condo, my dear. The sale concluded this morning. We secured an exceptional price, $480,000. It was a cash offer. Can you fathom it? It's more than sufficient for the St. Regis deposit and Alicia's haute couture dress fund. Isn't that absolutely marvelous? The hallway seemed to tilt and spin. I leaned against the wall, my hand trembling. My condo. Mother, what are you talking about? You cannot. My name is on the deed. You are not at liberty to simply sell it. My mother's tone, usually that of a 55-year-old real estate broker adept at navigating every legal technicality, abruptly shed its effervescence. It became frigid, sharp, and condescending. "Oh no, darling, you must be mistaken. Our names are on the deed, my name and your father's. Your name is nowhere to be found. You simply contributed to the payments. Legally, Amani, it was our property to sell and we required it for your sister. She's getting married, for heaven's sake." I struggled to draw a breath. The $90,000 down payment from my inaugural substantial tech bonus, the 60 consecutive months of mortgage installments I had diligently made, every single one meticulously documented. "Mother," I whispered, "where am I supposed to reside?" "At any rate," she continued, as if my question had gone unheard, "the new proprietors are quite accommodating, a lovely Caucasian couple. They've generously granted you a full 30 days to relocate all your belongings. We must depart now, darling. The wedding planner is arriving with the fabric swatches. We'll celebrate this weekend. Speak soon. I love you." A click. The line went dead. I remained frozen in my hallway, within the very apartment I had just discovered was no longer my own. From my laptop in the adjacent room, I could discern Mr. Harrison's disembodied voice. "Amani, are you still with us? Have we lost you?" I stared blankly at the wall. My initial shock was hardening, solidifying into something cold, sharp, and weighty. They had finally pushed me too far. The conflict had just commenced. I terminated the Zoom meeting with a click. I offered no farewell to Mr. Harrison, nor did I tender an apology or request to reschedule. I simply clicked. The laptop screen went dark, reflecting my own stunned, vacant expression. My living room, my exquisite, tranquil living room, suddenly felt like a fabricated movie set. It lacked authenticity. The plush grey sofa I had saved for over 3 months. The abstract artwork acquired at a local Atlanta festival. The subtle fragrance of my costly soy wax candle. It was not mine. It was all a deceit. 30 days. They had granted me 30 days to pack away 5 years of my existence. My mind raced backward, attempting to pinpoint the exact moment the snare was set. It wasn't difficult to locate. It occurred 5 years prior. I was 24, exhilarated by life, having just secured my first significant promotion at the technology firm. I had $90,000 in my bank account. $90,000 I had arduously accumulated. It was a compilation of scholarship reimbursements I had obsessively saved, every performance bonus, and cash from freelance web design projects undertaken during college instead of sleeping. I was poised to purchase my first residence. I was immensely proud. I presented my parents with the listing for this very condominium. My mother, Denise, offered a smile, but it was that tight, professional real estate agent smile that failed to reach her eyes. "Oh, Buckhead is ambitious, Amani," she remarked, sipping her sweet tea. My father, Marcus, simply nodded in agreement, a look of concern on his face. "Honey, your credit is still quite new," he stated in that gentle, worried tone he consistently adopted before making a request. "You're only 24. Securing a jumbo loan in this district is challenging. The bank will perceive you as a risk." I informed them I did not require a jumbo loan. I explained I possessed the $90,000 for the down payment. I had the pre-approval letter. My mother placed her hand on mine. "Sweetheart, I know you're intelligent, but allow us to assist you. Let your father and me co-sign. We have established credit. It will streamline the entire process. It's merely a formality, of course, just paperwork, to ensure everything is expedited." A formality. That's what she termed it. And I, like an utter fool, was grateful. I believed they were finally offering their support, recognizing me as an equal. I transferred the $90,000 directly to the escrow account. I signed the documents they instructed me to sign, and subsequently the bills arrived, and I paid them every single month for 60 consecutive months. The mortgage, the homeowners association fees, the property taxes. I never missed a single payment. I never requested a dime from them. I was Amani, the responsible one. I was building my equity, or so I believed. Now, it all made a nauseatingly perfect kind of sense. This was never about my credit. It was about their asset. This was perpetually a long-term deception. My sister Alicia was the one who required assistance. Alicia, who received a brand new white BMW convertible for her 18th birthday, while I had to purchase my own decade-old Honda Civic with my own earnings from tutoring. Alicia, who withdrew from Spelman after 2 semesters to pursue a career as a full-time influencer, which essentially meant my parents financed her high-rise apartment in Midtown and her endless brunches. I recalled once screaming at my mother about it years ago. Why does she receive everything effortlessly while I must labor for every single thing I possess? My mother's countenance had hardened. She deployed that classic retort, the one she had used throughout my entire life, the one meticulously crafted to silence me. Because Alicia is delicate, Amani. The world is harsh on a beautiful, fragile young woman like her. She requires our protection. You are different. You are strong. You can endure it. She was correct on one singular point. I am strong, but she had misconstrued my strength for naivete. She presumed I was a workhorse, someone she could simply exploit until I collapsed. She presumed I was a savings account she could drain for her favored daughter. They had just pilfered $480,000 from me. They presumed I would simply acquiesce. The ice in my veins was no longer despair. It was unadulterated, focused, and utterly cold rage. I grabbed my car keys from the bowl by the door. I was not going to pack. I was going to wage war. The drive to Alpharetta was a crimson blur. I have no recollection of the traffic on the 400. I don't recall signaling. All I remember is my hands gripping the steering wheel of my Honda Civic with such intensity that my knuckles turned white. The very same Honda Civic I had purchased myself at 19 because my parents were preoccupied with securing a down payment for Alicia's BMW. I turned into their driveway, tires skidding on the immaculate, flawless paving stones. Their residence was a 2-story brick colonial situated on a pristine emerald lawn in a neighborhood where everyone offered polite greetings and feigned happiness. It was the house my mother had perpetually envisioned, the symbol of the Washingtons' arrival, the house that projected respectability and affluence to all her acquaintances from church. I did not knock. I did not ring the doorbell. I utilized my old key and burst through the front door. Where is she? My father, Marcus, was precisely where I anticipated him to be. He was in the den, reclining in his well-worn leather armchair, the television blaring a football game. He looked up, irritated by the intrusion. Amani, for heaven's sake, you're letting all the cold air in. You sold my house, I screamed. The words reverberated through the cavernous foyer. You allowed her to sell my house. My father sighed that deep, put-upon exhalation he always employed when I was proving troublesome. He reached for the remote and lowered the volume, but he did not turn it off. He couldn't even grant me his undivided attention for this. Amani, lower your voice, he admonished without meeting my gaze. Don't enter this house acting erratically. We acted in the family's best interests. In the family's best interests. I was trembling. That was my money. That was my home. How could you simply give it to her? Don't be dramatic, he snapped. It's just a condominium. Your sister requires this. Alicia is getting married. Do you comprehend what that signifies? This young man, Chad, his family holds considerable standing. They possess status. This represents a monumental opportunity for all of us. She deserves a magnificent wedding. She deserves it. She deserves it at my expense. And what about me? What do I deserve, Father? To be without a home. You'll manage, he mumbled, waving his hand dismissively. You're intelligent. You earn a substantial income with that computer work. You'll rebound. You always do. That was it. That was my reward for being the strong one, my punishment for being the responsible one. I'm contacting an attorney, I declared, my voice dropping, becoming as frigid as the rage churning in my stomach. I am contacting an attorney and I am suing both of you. This is larceny. You stole from me. An attorney, the voice echoed from the top of the grand staircase. My mother, Denise, she was adorned in a sumptuous cream-coloured silk robe, her hair perfectly wrapped in a towel. She appeared as though she had just emerged from a spa. She descended the stairs slowly, one hand trailing along the polished banister. An attorney, she repeated, savouring the word. She actually let out a laugh. It was a brief, sharp, unpleasant sound. Is that what you stated, Amani? You intend to sue your father and me, the individuals who raised you, the individuals who provided you with shelter. You did not provide me with shelter, I retorted. I have been providing my own shelter for 5 years and you've just sold it. She reached the foot of the stairs and paused, regarding me with a mixture of pity and disdain. Proceed, darling. Contact your little lawyer. Expend the funds. He will examine the documentation and inform you precisely what I am conveying to you now. The deed of trust bears my name and your father's name. Your name is absent. However, the payments, the down payment, I possess the bank records. Oh, sweetheart, she said, stepping into the living room. That is exceptionally naive. Any funds you contributed were considered rent. Rent that you paid to reside in our property. As far as the law is concerned, you were a tenant. An ambitious one, I'll grant you that, but a tenant nonetheless. She walked over to my father and picked up a magazine from the side table. I am a licensed real estate professional, Amani. I have been in this industry for 25 years. I have meticulously reviewed every line of the fine print. I am fully aware of my actions. She tapped the magazine against her hand. You presented a risk. We safeguarded the asset. And now that asset will be liquidated to finance something of greater consequence, your sister's future. I simply stood there, rendered speechless. The rage had dissipated. It had been supplanted by a terrifyingly cold realization. This was not a crime of impulse. It was not a desperate, spontaneous decision. This was a meticulously orchestrated strategy, a calculated plan devised over an extended period. They had been nurturing me for 5 years only to prepare me for this immolation. My mother glanced up from the magazine, her eyes entirely devoid of emotion. You have made your dramatic display. Now, return home and commence packing your belongings. The new owners are exceedingly eager to move in, and I would prefer they did not initiate eviction proceedings. That would be quite untidy. The following morning, I found myself in a sophisticated downtown legal office. Seated across the desk was Tariq James. We had attended Georgia Tech together. He was the sole individual I knew who possessed a keener intellect regarding systems than myself, which is precisely why he pursued law while I gravitated towards coding. I had already transmitted to him scanned copies of every document I possessed. The mortgage statements, the $90,000 wire transfer, 60 consecutive months of bank records, all demonstrating payments originating from my account to the bank. I sat there vibrating with a cold, lucid fury, awaiting his pronouncement on how we were going to dismantle them. Tariq did not look at me. He was fixated on his second monitor, perusing the PDFs of the closing documents from 5 years prior. He exhaled a long, slow breath and leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. Amani, he stated, his voice flat. That's when my stomach plummeted. They got you, he confessed. They truly got you. What are you implying? I demanded, my voice sharp. I have the records. I paid the down payment. I paid the mortgage. Every single month it's my money. Tariq shook his head, his expression one of genuine pain. It doesn't matter what you paid, Amani. What matters is what you signed. And 5 years ago, you signed a closing packet that lists your parents, Marcus and Denise Washington, as the sole owners on the deed of trust. Your name is not on the title. Legally, you are not the owner. You never were. But the payments, the $90,000, I insisted, my voice escalating. That's wire fraud. It's not, he said gently, interrupting me. It's her word against theirs. That's what this is. We can file a lawsuit, absolutely. We can argue for a constructive trust claim. You are the de facto owner, but Amani, it will be a bloodbath. He leaned forward. Consider it. Your mother is a professional real estate broker. She knew precisely what she was doing. The moment we file, she will countersue. She will claim the $90,000 was a gift from a grateful daughter. She will claim the 6 years of mortgage payments were rent. Just rent you are paying to live in their investment property. Rent? I scoffed. Who pays rent and a $90,000 down payment? They'll say it was a security deposit, Tariq explained. They'll say it was back rent. They'll say whatever they wish. And honestly, a judge might believe them. It's a he said, she said scenario in a family dispute. This won't be swift, Amani. This will take years. It will cost you $50,000, perhaps $60,000 in legal fees. And at the conclusion of it all, a judge might simply state, it's a family matter, and refuse to intervene. You might not recover a single dime, and you'll be financially depleted from the legal expenses. My stomach felt as though it were filled with sodden cement. So that's it. They simply win. They abscond with $500,000 from me, and they simply win. As if summoned by the universe, my phone vibrated on the glass desk. A new email. The subject line was cold and personal. Official notice. 1422 Buckhead Terrace, Unit 12B. My hand trembled as I opened it. It was from a law firm I had never encountered. On behalf of the new owners, Mr. and Mrs. Henderson, we hereby serve this official legal notice to vacate the premises within 30 days, by October 28th. Failure to comply will result in formal eviction proceedings. I slid the phone across the desk to Tariq. He read it and cursed under his breath. They're not even waiting, he stated. They're playing hardball. I stood up. My body felt numb. I was not merely betrayed. I was not merely robbed. I had been an imbecile. My mother had not only stolen from me, she had demonstrated she was more cunning than me. She had exploited my trust, my work ethic, and my affection against me, and she had executed it flawlessly. I exited Tariq's office in a daze. I entered my car and simply sat in the parking garage. The notice to vacate burned on my phone screen. I was officially homeless in 30 days. I had lost $500,000. And just when I believed the humiliation could not possibly deepen any further, my phone illuminated once more. It was a new text message from Mum. Hi, sweetheart. Just a reminder, don't forget about our big celebration dinner tonight. 7 p.m. at the St. Regis, at that amazing steakhouse. Alicia and Chad are so excited. We have so much to celebrate. Don't be late. A celebration? They weren't merely plundering me. They were inviting me to the fete they were hosting with my own money. They wanted me to sit there and smile while they toasted my ruination. I arrived at 7. The steakhouse at the St. Regis was the type of establishment that made one feel impoverished merely by inhaling the air. The ceilings were 2 stories high, adorned with dark wood and crystal chandeliers. Men in suits and women in cocktail dresses murmured over plates of food that cost more than my car payment. I was dressed in the attire I had worn to Tarek's office: black slacks and a silk blouse. I felt like a server who had strayed from their shift. They were already seated at a large circular booth in the centre of the room. My mother, Denise, held court, resplendent in a new, vibrant blue dress. My father, Marcus, was attired in a suit I had never seen, appearing preened and important. And then there was the golden couple. My sister Alicia was practically incandescent, her skin luminous, her 5-carat diamond ring catching the light from every conceivable angle. She was draped in a minuscule, expensive-looking red dress. Beside her sat Chad Thompson, her 30-year-old fiancé. He was precisely as one might expect: tall, blonde, with a languid, confident smile that never quite reached his eyes. He wore a blue blazer without a tie, the very image of casual old money arrogance. I slid into the booth, the leather sighing beneath me. "Sorry I'm late," I mumbled. "Oh, Amani, there you are!" Alicia shrieked as if she hadn't just played a role in detonating my life. She leaned across the table and clasped my hand, her rings digging into my skin. "I'm so glad you could make it." "Oh, honey, you look utterly exhausted. Is the packing just dreadful? I can't even imagine." Her voice was laden with that insincere, syrupy concern she so expertly employed. The implication was clear: thank you for packing up your life so I can live mine. Before I could respond, Chad, the fiancé, raised his glass of dark liquor in my direction. "Amani, correct? A pleasure to finally meet you." He did not await a reply. "Listen, I just wanted to express my gratitude for the contribution." He uttered the word contribution as if he were referencing a gratuity I had left. "I was just remarking to Alicia," he continued, swirling his drink. "A wedding budget under $300,000 is simply not negotiable, you understand? Not with my family's circle. It simply wouldn't be appropriate. So it's genuinely wonderful to see your family chipping in to make it happen." Or he offered me a smile, a flash of white teeth. He was patting me on the head, metaphorically speaking. He was a wealthy white man from a wealthy white family, and he was thanking me, a black woman, for relinquishing my life savings so he could orchestrate an appropriate celebration. My skin felt as though it were aflame. I sought a glimmer of support from my father, but he was simply beaming. "Isn't it marvelous, Amani?" he boomed, blissfully unaware. "Our dear Alicia marrying into the esteemed Thompson family. Such a tremendous boon." My mother, meanwhile, wore a serene smile, like a sovereign observing her domain. She had triumphed, I thought. She had forged the crucial alliance. She had purchased her ascent into the social stratosphere she'd always coveted, with my own future serving as the price. The server approached. "May I offer you a beverage, miss?" "A Cabernet, please," I replied, my voice strained. "The most exquisite you possess, and bring the entire bottle." For the ensuing hour I sat and drank. I drank as they expounded on floral arrangements costing $10,000. I drank as Alicia deliberated whether her attendants should travel to Paris or Milan for their gown fittings. I drank as my mother regaled them with an extended, flattering account of Chad's father's enterprise. Each laugh, each celebratory toast felt like another shovelful of earth cast upon the grave of my former existence, and I was compelled to remain a spectator at its interment. I drained my third glass of wine. The potent combination of fury and alcohol sent my head into a dizzying spin. I could no longer endure sitting there, witnessing their celebration of my downfall. I rose abruptly and the table fell into silence. "Imani, are you quite well?" my mother inquired, a frown of annoyance creasing her brow. I met her gaze, my vision narrowing. I had one final maneuver, one last desperate plea to the woman who was meant to be my mother. "I need to speak with you," I stated, my tone low and menacing. I gestured toward the rear of the establishment. In the ladies' lounge, my mother followed me. It was a symphony of marble and gilded accoutrements, with delicate classical melodies emanating from concealed speakers. It possessed the chilling impersonality of a mausoleum. She crossed her arms, leaning against the polished granite, her expensive perfume suffusing the confined space. "All right, Imani," she declared, her voice sharp and exasperated. "What is this about? You're causing a spectacle. Chad will perceive our family as unstable." "Unstable?" I echoed, my laugh a hollow, watery sound. "Mum, he believes I gifted my entire house to his wedding fund. How is that not indicative of instability?" I turned to confront her. The wine had emboldened me, but the desperation was palpable. This was my final opportunity. I had to attempt it. "Mum, please," I implored, despising the sound of my own voice. "Please, make this stop. Contact the bank, contact the buyers. You're the real estate agent. You can reverse this. Claim a clerical error in the documentation." I moved closer. That was everything I possessed. That was my $90,000 down payment. That was 5 years of my earnings. I'll be destitute. I'll have nothing. Please, Mum, don't do this to me. My mother merely stared, her expression unyielding. There was no softening, no hint of sadness, guilt, or internal conflict. She appeared utterly bored, as if I were a petulant child requesting a toy she had already denied. She turned to the grand, gold-framed mirror and retrieved a tube of expensive crimson lipstick from her clutch. With meticulous care, she began to reapply it, her attention fixed on her own reflection rather than mine. "Don't be so selfish, Amani," she stated calmly, her gaze fixed on her lips. My jaw dropped. "Selfish? I'm being selfish. You pilfered $500,000 from me." "I reallocated a family asset," she corrected, snapping the lipstick tube shut. Finally turning to face me, her eyes were as glacial and unfeeling as the marble countertop. "You are 29 years old, Amani, and all you have to show for it is a single condominium and that trivial computer job. Your sister, conversely, is poised to enter a dynasty, a legacy. The Thompson family commands connections we have only dared to dream of. This union is not merely a celebration, it represents an establishment. It concerns our future. It's about the Washington name finally commanding respect in this city." "But what about my name?" I whispered. "What about my future?" She took a step toward me and, with a gesture that sent a shiver down my spine, straightened the collar of my blouse. It was a maternal act so profoundly unsettling it made my skin crawl. "Your purpose is to support your family. That has always been your designated role. You are the resilient one. Remember, sometimes an individual must make a sacrifice for the greater welfare of the family unit." She gave my collar a final dismissive pat. "This time, Amani, the burden falls upon you." She swept past me, her perfume trailing in her wake, and exited the restroom. She left me standing there, alone, confronting my own image in the mirror. She was correct. I was 29 and I had been a fool. My entire existence had been an effort to earn the affection of a woman who viewed me as nothing more than a resource to be exploited, a sacrifice to be made. I gazed at my reflection. The pleading girl had vanished. The distraught daughter was no more. My eyes held only a vast, hollow expanse, an echoing void. I smoothed my blouse, turned and returned to the table. I sat down, retrieved my wineglass, and offered a smile to my sister, who was engrossed in displaying floral arrangement photographs from her phone to Chad. They hadn't even registered my absence. A few days after that mortifying dinner, I found myself ensconced within a labyrinth of cardboard boxes. My apartment, my lovely, ill-gotten apartment, felt utterly alien. I couldn't bear to remain indoors, so I sat in my car in the parking garage, the engine off, the air thick and stagnant. On my phone, Zillow was open and I was frantically scrolling, seeking shelter. 27 days. That was my deadline. The prices made me feel physically ill. A one-bedroom apartment in any respectable part of Atlanta commanded $2,800 to $3,000, all requiring the first month's rent, the last month's rent, and a substantial security deposit. I did the arithmetic. I didn't have it. My $90,000, my entire life savings was gone. They had stripped me of everything. I would be compelled to liquidate my 401k, enduring the substantial penalty simply to avoid homelessness. Tears of sheer, unadulterated frustration began to blur the screen. Then my phone rang. The display illuminated with the names of Mom and Alicia. A joint FaceTime call. My stomach twisted. I let it ring twice, knowing they would persist. Wiping my eyes, I tapped the green icon. Their faces blazed onto my screen, radiant and flushed with exhilaration. They were in a bright, mirror-filled, high-end bridal boutique. Alicia stood on a raised platform, twirling in a cascade of white lace and shimmering tulle, resembling a princess. "Imani, oh my goodness, look!" she squealed, executing a small pirouette. "This is it, this is the one, isn't it exquisite?" My mother stood beside her, a champagne flute in hand. "Hi, darling," she said, her voice giddy. "We're just so thrilled, and we were just talking about you. We wanted to call and express our gratitude for the wedding gift." Alicia clasped her hands together, the 5-carat diamond glinting. "Yes, thank you, sis. Thank you for my gown. I love you." They both laughed, a bright, tinkling, joyful sound. There they stood, adorned in a dress likely costing $20,000, purchased with my stolen funds, celebrating. They were thanking me for it as if I had meticulously wrapped my entire future in a bow and presented it to them. I stared at them, at their beaming, contented faces. I remained silent. My mother's smile faltered slightly. "Imani, honey, did you hear us? We said thank you. You know, for the condo funds." I pressed the red end call button. The screen turned black. The call concluded. And just like that, the tears ceased. It was as if a switch had been flipped. The burning rage, the despair, the suffocating sorrow, all of it vanished. In its stead, something frigid, weighty, and wonderfully solid settled within my chest. It was ice. I sat in the stillness of my car for a full minute. Then I closed the Zillow application. I opened my banking app. I logged in with Face ID. My checking account balance was perilously low. I tapped on bill pay, then I tapped on scheduled payments. My upcoming obligations were listed: my student loan, my car payment, and then there it was, the significant one, scheduled for payment in 2 days. The payment I had established 8 years prior. The one I had never missed. The one I had never ever discussed. Recipient, Truist Bank. Amount $4,150. Memo: mortgage account 884925. Property 22, Magnolia Drive, 1422 Magnolia Drive. The exquisite 2-story brick colonial in Alpharetta. The home my mother had been so proud of. The home where my father watched football. The home they were likely occupying at that very moment, toasting their good fortune. The home on which I had been secretly making mortgage payments for 8 years. I looked at the payment. I looked at the cardboard boxes piled in my back seat. They had taken my home. So I guided my finger and pressed the button on the screen. Cancel this payment. A pop-up appeared. Are you sure you wish to cancel this payment and all subsequent scheduled payments to this recipient? My hand remained steady. I pressed confirm. I departed the parking garage. I could not return to the apartment. I drove to a small, tranquil coffee shop across town, a place where I knew no one would recognize me. I ordered a black coffee I didn't desire, settled into a dim corner and retrieved my laptop. I accessed my secure drive, a repository for my tax documents, old contracts, and one folder I hadn't opened in years. The folder was labeled Family Assets. I clicked it. Within lay a collection of scanned PDFs and saved email threads, all dating back 8 years. I was 21. I had just graduated from Georgia Tech and had been at my first professional position for precisely 6 months. I was so proud. I was earning $48,000 annually, which felt like an immense fortune. I resided in a minuscule studio apartment, diligently saving every penny. That's when the initial call arrived. It was my father, Marcus, his voice despairing. He had been laid off from his mid-level management role. The company was undergoing downsizing. He was 50 years old, and in his mind, his life had concluded. He remained unemployed for 6 months. My mother, Denise, with her nascent real estate career, wasn't generating sufficient income to cover their considerable expenditures. The immaculate brick colonial in Alpharetta, the 2 car payments, the country club membership they refused to relinquish. I unearthed the first document. It was a scanned letter from the bank, addressed to Marcus and Denise Washington. The text was large and alarming. Notice of default. The bank was initiating foreclosure proceedings on 1422 Magnolia Drive. Then I opened the email. It originated from my father's personal account, sent to my new work email at 2 a.m. My 21-year-old self had read it on her phone while lying in bed. The subject line was simply Imani. Imani, my girl, I don't know what to do. The bank is taking the house. Your mother, she's a wreck. She can't face the people at church. She can't face the neighbors. They're going to put a sign on our lawn, Imani. They're going to auction our home, everything we've worked for, all our dignity gone. I remember the chilling dread I felt as I read it. You're the only one, the email continued. You're the intelligent one. You're the one with the good job. I know you're just starting out, but you're our only hope. I am begging you, Imani, don't let them humiliate us. Please, I promise I will repay every single cent as soon as I get back on my feet. Please save your family. Save the family. That was perpetually my role. I was the strong one, the responsible one. I didn't hesitate. I liquidated my entire savings, the $15,000 I had painstakingly accumulated, and contacted their bank. I, a 21-year-old girl, called a mortgage bank and requested to speak with the foreclosure department. I discovered the subsequent email in the folder. It was from a bank representative sent to me and my parents. The subject, Confidential Loan Modification Agreement, 1422 Magnolia Drive. My 21-year-old self had believed herself to be a hero. My 29-year-old self, seated in a coffee shop, finally recognized her folly. I hadn't saved them. I had merely become their clandestine, silent enabler. I looked at the screen at that email exchange from 8 years ago, at the agreement. It wasn't truly a modification. It was a rescue plan, a secret, private bailout orchestrated by a desperate 21-year-old girl. The bank had agreed to halt the foreclosure. They had consented to restructure the loan, but they imposed a single, absolute, non-negotiable condition. A third-party guarantor had to step in. A third party possessing a stable, verifiable income was required to co-sign the new agreement and assume responsibility for the payments. That third party was me. I, at 21 years old, with my 6 months of employment history, had agreed. I directed my brand new stable salary towards their mortgage. The payment was $4,150 every single month without fail for 96 consecutive months. I performed the calculation right there in the coffee shop, on a napkin. 8 years multiplied by 12 months multiplied by $450. I had secretly paid $398,400 to maintain that roof over their heads. And the most disturbing aspect, the truly twisted part, was that they had forgotten. I am certain that initially they were grateful. My father repaid me in small increments 3 times before securing his new, less demanding job. He claimed he needed to rebuild his savings. My mother, the realtor, had the audacity to suggest it was a prudent investment for my portfolio. But as the years passed, their narrative shifted. They convinced themselves that they had skillfully renegotiated the loan, that the bank had simply reduced their interest rate out of benevolence. My $4,000 payment became invisible. It faded into the background noise. It was simply something Amani does. She's the strong one. She can handle it. That payment, my hidden sacrifice, became the unseen bedrock of their entire comfortable existence. It paid for the brick colonial. It paid for their standing in the community. It paid for their dinner parties. It paid for the very financial security that enabled my mother to retain her own commissions, the commissions she used to assist Alicia in acquiring a BMW. They forgot that I was their bank. They forgot that I was the sole reason they possessed a home at all. And they had just pilfered $480,000 from me to fund a party. They didn't merely bite the hand that fed them, they severed it at the shoulder. They believed they had stolen my future. They had no inkling that they had personally detonated their own. I closed the laptop. The quiet click of its lid sounded as definitive as a judge's gavel. The 96-month rescue operation was officially concluded. The first of the month was 2 days away. The bomb was set. All I had to do now was wait. 10 days elapsed. The first of the month arrived and departed in a whirlwind of packing tape and U-Haul receipts. I was now seated on the floor of a sterile, exorbitantly priced rental apartment in Midtown. The walls were thin and the view was of a parking garage. My former condominium, my sanctuary, was gone. The new proprietors had taken possession 2 days prior. I was compelled to liquidate a significant portion of my 401k merely to cover the deposit and the first and last month's rent for this new abode. The financial impact was staggering, and the 30% penalty churned my stomach. I was unpacking a box labeled kitchen when my phone rang. I glanced at the screen. Mom, my heart didn't leap. I felt no rage, no despair, only a cold, heavy sense of inevitability. The second domino was poised to fall. I allowed it to ring 3 times, took a composed sip of my coffee, and then answered, placing it on speaker. Hello. There was no effervescent greeting. No. Hi, sweetie. Her voice was thin, taut, and bewildered. Imani, something peculiar just occurred. The bank called Truist. Oh, I replied, extracting a coffee mug from the box. Yes, she said, her voice growing agitated. They stated we are 10 days past due on the mortgage. 10 days? Can you fathom it? They've never made such an error before. I informed them, I said, we have never been late on a payment. It must be some ridiculous computer glitch, some error in their system. I thought perhaps you might know what to do. I gazed out the window at the concrete expanse of the parking garage. The moment had finally arrived. It's not an error, Mom, I said calmly. A prolonged silence ensued on the other end of the line, a complete void. What? She finally managed. What do you mean it's not an error? I mean I stopped the payment, I stated. I unwrapped another mug. I heard a sharp intake of breath. You stopped paying what? What are you possibly referring to, Amani? You don't pay our mortgage. We do. The sheer depth of her ignorance, so profound, was almost astonishing. She had utterly expunged my 8-year sacrifice from her memory. No, Mum, I said, my voice as clear and sharp as fractured glass. You don't, I do. The mortgage on your residence, 1422 Magnolia Drive, the payment of $4,150, the payment that I have personally rendered every single month on the first for the past 8 years. The silence on the other end was deafening. I could hear her faint, shallow breathing. That payment, I continued, which amounts to $398,400, the payment that safeguarded your precious home from foreclosure 8 years ago. That payment, I discontinued it. Amani, she whispered, her voice no longer confused but trembling. I had to, I said, my tone bright and helpful. I simply could no longer afford it. I had to cover the security deposit and 2 months' rent on this new apartment, and my funds were somewhat constrained. You know, since you sold my old apartment out from under me to cover Alicia's wedding, I suppose you could say I reallocated a family asset. She remained silent, incapable of speech. I must go now, Mum, I said. I have a considerable number of boxes to unpack. Goodbye. I depressed the red end call button. I left her immersed in the echoing silence of the financial devastation she had just unearthed. I looked at my coffee mug. The first domino had just struck the second, and I knew the rest were about to cascade down. The instant I ended the call, an explosion of activity ensued. It wasn't a single call, it was a tempest. First, Mum, I immediately silenced it. Dad, I silenced it. A new voicemail notification appeared, then another and a third, a text message from Dad. Imani, call me immediately. This is not amusing. A text from Mum. Imani Janelle Washington, you pick up this phone this instant. You have made a grave error. Call the bank. I did not call the bank. I simply sat on my floor, surrounded by boxes, and I envisioned the scene. I imagined the panic setting in at the magnificent brick colonial in Alpharetta. The scene shifts. We are in their immaculate cream-colored kitchen. My mother Denise is pacing in her silk robe, her phone pressed so firmly to her ear her hand is trembling. My father, Marcus, is slumped on a bar stool at the kitchen island, his face a ghastly white, listening on speakerphone. I'm sorry, Mrs. Washington, but as I've explained, there is no glitch. A calm, professional voice emanates from the speaker. It's Mr. Henderson, a loan manager. The payment was scheduled for the 1st. It was cancelled by the third-party payer on the 29th of last month. What third-party payer? Denise shrieks, her real estate agent composure completely fractured. We are the payers, Marcus and Denise Washington. We've been paying for years. There's the sound of a keyboard clicking on the other end. Mr. Henderson sighs. Ma'am, he says, his voice now cautious, as if addressing someone unstable. I am looking at the confidential loan modification agreement that was signed by you, your husband, and a third party 8 years ago. This agreement was contingent. It was contingent upon a guarantor, and Imani J. Washington assuming all monthly payments. As those payments have now officially ceased, your loan is in default. Marcus makes a small, gasping sound. Default? What does that mean? We'll just pay it? It's 10 days late. We'll pay the $4,150 right now. I'm afraid it's not that simple, sir, Mr. Henderson states, his voice now icy. According to the acceleration clause in this agreement, the termination of the third-party payment plan triggers an immediate due-on-sale provision. A what? Denise whispers. The full remaining balance of your loan is now immediately due. My father looks as if he's been struck. The full balance, how much is that? How much? More typing. The current principal balance on your mortgage is $510,128. That amount is due within 30 days, or we will be compelled to commence foreclosure proceedings. Denise emits a high-pitched, hysterical laugh. $500,000? That's preposterous. We don't have... Wait. Her eyes suddenly gleam with a wild, desperate hope. Yes, we do. Marcus, the condo, the money from selling the condo, that $480,000, it's in the account. We can cover it. She fumbles for her laptop, opening their shared banking portal. Her fingers a blur across the keys. She stops. the screen's glow illuminating her face, which has turned a deathly pale. "Marcus," she whispers, her voice a venomous hiss. "Marcus, where is the money?" Her father averts his gaze from her, fixing his stare on the polished granite countertop as if it holds the secrets of the universe. The St. Regis, Denise," he stammers. "What about the St. Regis?" They called yesterday," he murmurs. "They required the full deposit for the catering and the ballroom, the entire $300,000. And Alicia, her gown, and the event planner. Chad's family insisted on the platinum package. Marcus, what have you done? I transferred it." He practically bellows, his voice cracking with strain. "I transferred it all, Denise, precisely as you instructed. You told me to settle all the vendors immediately so they couldn't renege. You said it was all non-refundable. You even wired the final $80,000 to the florist this very morning." A ceramic mug slips from Denise's grasp, shattering on the immaculate tiled floor. They stand frozen, staring at one another. The $480,000 from my life savings is vanished, spent, transferred, irrevocably gone. And the $510,000 invoice for their own residence sits on the table, due in full. They possess no reserves, no readily available funds, nothing. They are utterly and completely bankrupt. The meticulously crafted trap my mother had set for me had just sprung shut upon her. I allowed them to stew in their panic. For 3 days an unnerving silence descended. The torrent of irate voicemails and threatening text messages ceased. It was a novel form of torment for them, a quiet they knew they could ill afford. They had exhausted all their options. I held the funds and, more critically, I possessed the unvarnished truth. I spent those 3 days packing. Each box I sealed felt like a small triumph. Each item I wrapped served as a reminder that I was escaping. I was shedding their influence. I was embarking on a new chapter, wounded and diminished financially, but I was free. The 30 days they had granted me were dwindling. I had just finished loading the final box into my rented storage unit when my phone rang. It wasn't my mother or father, it was Alicia. I almost let it go unanswered. I had nothing to say to her, but a cold, detached curiosity compelled me to pick up. I activated the speakerphone and placed the device on the passenger seat of my car. "Alicia." The sound emanating from the speaker was inhuman. It was a piercing shriek, a high-pitched, hysterical wail. You did this. You ruined everything. I despise you. I despise you." I waited, letting her vent her fury. It was the sound of a toddler's tantrum, compounded by the terror of a pampered woman realizing her gilded world was in ashes. "Alicia," I stated calmly, starting my vehicle, "I haven't the faintest idea what you're referring to. My wedding, my house, you demon. What did you do to them? What did you do?" Amidst her ragged, ugly sobs, the narrative began to unfold. The story of what had transpired at the Brick Colonial in Alpharetta that morning. She explained that she and Chad had been occupied all day. They were at their cake tasting, she sobbed, having finalized the details of their magnificent 7-tiered lemon raspberry confection. They were discussing their honeymoon, a first-class excursion to the Maldives, courtesy of Chad's father. She described herself as, in her own words, happier than I've ever been. Then they returned home. She recounted how they walked in through the garage, laughing, their shopping bags swinging, and were met with utter devastation. The first thing she saw, she stated, was my father, Marcus, our strong, stoic, armchair-bound patriarch. He wasn't in his usual seat. He was on the kitchen floor, a crumpled heap against the cabinetry, sobbing uncontrollably. Not merely crying, she emphasized, but weeping as if a death had occurred. My mother, Denise, the supposed mastermind, was simply standing, She was frozen in the center of the kitchen, clad in her expensive silk robe, clutching a piece of paper. Her face, Alicia described, was a ghastly white, and affixed to their custom-painted deep blue front door was a garish neon orange sticker. Alicia admitted that her initial thought was it was a prank. Some neighborhood kids. "What is wrong with you people?" Alicia had shrieked at them. "Dad, get off the floor, you're being pathetic." "Mom, what is that ridiculous thing on the door?" My mother, Denise, remained motionless, whispering only, "We're ruined, it's over." Alicia, in her profound, spoiled ignorance, failed to grasp the gravity. She assumed they were being melodramatic, that this somehow pertained to her. "Stop it, you're scaring me, you're ruining our good mood." And at that precise moment, my father, the man who had refused to meet my gaze, the man who had advised me to cease my theatrics, finally looked up. His face was blotchy, his eyes swollen and red. He met the gaze of his precious golden child and confessed the truth. "He told me, Amani," Alicia shrieked into my phone. "He told me that you financed this house. He said you've been paying for it forever." 8 years, I corrected, my voice quiet. "For 8 years," Alicia emitted another guttural wail. He said the bank is repossessing it, that the letter states they're selling our house. In 30 days, they're evicting us. They're putting us on the street." I tightened my grip on the steering wheel. 30 days. The universe possessed a profoundly dark sense of humor. "And then he told me," she choked out, her words catching in her throat. "He told me about your money, the $480,000. He said, Mom stole it from you to pay for my—" She trailed off. The realization had finally dawned on her. All of it. The gown, the St. Regis, the flowers, the 7-tiered cake, the honeymoon. All financed by my labor, by my pilfered funds. And the check that had funded it all had just bounced. Alicia's voice transformed. The confusion evaporated, replaced by pure, unadulterated malice. "You orchestrated this," she hissed. "This is your fault. You set them up. You stopped paying. You knew this would happen. You were simply envious." "Envious?" I inquired, my voice dangerously serene. "Yes, envious of me, of Chad, of my wedding. You couldn't bear to see me happy, so you resolved to ruin us all. You'd rather see your own family destitute than witness my single perfect day." I despise you, Amani. I will never forgive you for this." The call abruptly ended. She had hung up. I remained in my car, enveloped in the quiet solitude of the storage unit parking lot. I pondered her words, how my father had finally confessed, how he had admitted they had embezzled my funds, immediately after admitting I had been subsidizing their entire existence. He had finally spoken the truth, not to spare me, not to offer an apology, but because his entire world had imploded, and there was no one left to deceive. They were ruined. They had lost their home. They had lost their money. And they had lost the respect of their precious son-in-law. The gilded dynasty my mother had so desperately sought to acquire had simply evaporated. I shifted the car into gear and pulled out of the parking lot. The storm I had initiated had escalated into a raging hurricane, and it had just made landfall. The incessant buzzing sound was so jarring it made me flinch. It wasn't my phone, it was the ancient yellowing intercom panel beside my apartment door. I had been in my new rental for less than 24 hours, and I hadn't even shared the address with anyone. I walked over and pressed the talk button. "Hello?" A hesitant voice filtered through the static. Hi, this is Mike, the lobby attendant. There's a group of people here for you. A family." A chill coursed through me. "A family?" "Yeah," the guard confirmed, a palpable discomfort in his tone. They say it's an emergency, a Mr. and Mrs. Washington and Alicia Washington and a Mr. Thompson. They seem, well, they're very upset. Ma'am, should I send them up? No, I stated, my voice instantly firm. Do not send them up, I'll be right down. I didn't descend. Instead, I went to the small, grainy security monitor adjacent to the intercom. I activated the lobby camera feed, and there they were. The image was stark black and white, but the desperation was vividly apparent. The four of them were huddled together in the sterile, fluorescent-lit lobby of my new, modest apartment building. They were a sight. My father, Marcus, appeared spectral. He was slumped in a hard plastic lobby chair, his suit wrinkled, his gaze fixed on the floor. He looked as though he had aged 2 decades in 3 days. He was a broken, hollowed-out shell of a man. My sister Alicia radiated a toxic energy. Her influencer perfection was gone. Her hair was disheveled, her expensive attire rumpled. Her face was blotchy and red from weeping. She paced the confined space like a cornered animal. And my mother, Denise, the queen bee, the orchestrator, the proud, polished, immaculate real estate professional who valued appearances above all else, was a wreck. Her hair was flat and unkempt. Her expensive blue dress was creased as if she'd slept in it. Her face was bare, puffy, and stained with tears. She was the one relentlessly pressing the buzzer. Then there was Chad. He wasn't with them. He stood about 10 feet away, near a wilting lobby plant. He was entirely unaffected. His expensive blonde hair was perfect. His blue blazer was immaculate. He exuded no desperation, no sadness. He was merely observing them, arms crossed, his face a mask of cold, analytical disdain. He was an outsider, appraising his new pathetic family. I allowed them to wait for a full minute. I watched my mother press the buzzer again, her hand trembling. Finally, I activated the talk button. My voice echoed through their abject humiliation in the lobby. "Can I help you?" Denise visibly started. She rushed to the intercom panel, her face filling my screen. "Imani. Oh, baby, thank God, Imani. Honey, please, you have to let us up. We need to talk to you." "I can hear you perfectly well from here," I replied, my voice as flat and cold as the concrete walls surrounding me. "Imani, please," she wailed, her voice raw with genuine sobs. The queen was groveling. "Baby, I'm sorry. I am so sorry. I made a mistake. A terrible, terrible mistake. I didn't understand the finances. Your father, we just got so excited for Alicia. You know how she is. We made a mistake, baby. Please." "A mistake?" I queried into the speaker. "You call grand theft a mistake?" "It wasn't. I didn't. We can fix this," she stammered, and then the true purpose of her visit spilled forth. "Imani, the bank, they're taking the house, our house, the neighbors, Imani, Mrs. Davis, from across the street. She saw the orange sign on the door. She called me. She asked me if we were moving." I simply watched her. Her tears weren't shed for having wronged me. She was weeping because her neighbor had called and because people at church. She continued, her voice escalating into hysteria. "The pastor's auxiliary. I'm supposed to host the Christmas brunch. Imani, this will destroy us. This will destroy our name, our honor. Think of our honor." She pressed her hands against the glass door, a mirror image of a prisoner begging for release. "You have to fix this, Imani. You're the only one who can call the bank right now. Tell them it was all a misunderstanding. Tell them you'll start paying again. You have to just make it stop. Please, baby, please." I let her words hang in the empty lobby. I allowed her sobs to echo on the screen. I could see my father slowly look up at the camera. I could see Alicia cease her pacing, her eyes wide. I could see Chad simply watching. I leaned closer to the intercom. No, I stated. The sobbing ceased instantly. What? Denise whispered. What? What did you say? I repeated, no, I will not be calling the bank. I will not be fixing this. I watched her expression crumble in real time. Imani, you don't mean that. You're just angry. I mean it, I replied, my voice so frigid it surprised even me. I am looking at you, Mum, and you are not sad because you hurt me. You are sad because Mrs. Davis saw the sign on your door. You are not here to apologize. You are here for a bailout. You want to talk about honor? Let's talk about it. For 8 long years, I paid $398,000 to protect your honor. I paid to keep your secret. I paid to ensure your friends at church believed you were a pillar of the community. I watched my father flinch. I observed Chad's eyebrows raise almost imperceptibly. And how did you repay me for that sacrifice? I continued. You responded by stealing $480,000 from me to host a party. You took my home, my savings, and my entire future, all to purchase your legacy. I leaned in one final time. You said it yourself, Mum. Sometimes one person must make a sacrifice for the greater good of the family. This time, it's you. I let the words settle. I watched my mother stumble back from the door, her hand covering her mouth. I watched my father bury his head in his hands. I believe, I said, my voice laced with finality, that I have sacrificed enough. We're done. For a moment, stunned silence pervaded. Then, from the side of the screen, Alicia lunged forward. The grief and panic on her face had been replaced by pure, blinding rage. Done! She shrieked, her voice muffled but still audible. You're not done. You can't be done. She slammed her entire body against the locked glass lobby door, rattling it in its frame. She wasn't begging, she was attacking. Let us in, she screamed, pounding on the glass with both fists. You fix this. You are ruining my life. You selfish. The security guard in the lobby, Mike, visibly flinched at the sound of Alicia's screams. I could see him on the monitor taking a step back from the group, his hand hovering near his own radio. He looked as though he was about to call the authorities. Alicia was completely unhinged. She pounded on the thick lobby glass with her fists, her face contorted and purple with fury. You are a selfish witch, Imani. A selfish, jealous, ugly witch. I simply watched her. I didn't press the talk button. I let her perform. You've always been this way, she shrieked, her voice cracking, my entire life. You were jealous when I got a car for my birthday. You were jealous when I was prom queen. You were jealous every time Mum and Dad told me I was the pretty one. You've been bitter since the day I was born. My mother, Denise, attempted to pull her back. Alicia, stop it. You're making a scene. I don't care. Alicia ripped her arm free from my mother's grasp. She's the one making a scene. She's the one destroying our family. She couldn't stand it, could you, Imani? You couldn't stand that I was the one getting the $300,000 wedding, that I was the one marrying into the Thompson family. You just sat in your stupid little condo with your stupid little computer job, and you rotted with jealousy. You saw me happy and you just had to burn the whole world down. If you couldn't have it, nobody could. You'd rather see your own family homeless than see me have one perfect day. She was panting, her chest heaving, tears of pure, unadulterated venom streaming down her face. My father remained a heap on the floor, sobbing into his hands. My mother tried to restrain her daughter, whispering, "Stop it, stop it." Her own face was a mask of horrified shame, not for her actions, but for what the lobby attendant was witnessing. And then a new voice cut through the air. It was not loud, it was not emotional. It was as cold, sharp, and precise as a surgeon's scalpel. Enough. It was Chad. He hadn't moved from his spot by the wilting plant. He had simply watched, he had listened, and now he was speaking. Alicia's tantrum ceased instantly, as if he had flipped a switch. She froze, her fist still raised, and turned to him. The rage on her face was immediately replaced by a dawning, terrible panic. "Chad," she whispered. He slowly uncrossed his arms. He looked at the three of them. My weeping father on the floor, my groveling mother, his screaming, hysterical fiancé. He regarded them as a biologist might examine a failed experiment. "So let me just make sure I have this straight," Chad said, his voice quiet but carrying across the lobby. "Let's just summarize the facts for my own clarification." He took one step toward them. My mother and Alicia flinched. 8 years ago, Chad began, you, Marcus, and Denise defaulted on your primary mortgage. You were going to be foreclosed upon, correct? My father sobbed. My mother nodded, her body trembling. Then Chad continued, your other daughter, Imani, the one on the intercom, she secretly and without any legal obligation stepped in. And for 96 straight months, she paid your $4,150 mortgage. She paid, my God, she paid almost $400,000 of her own money to keep you in that house. Is that also correct? Denise couldn't speak. She merely nodded again. Okay, good, Chad said, his voice dripping with icy sarcasm. So in gratitude for this, you, Denise, as a real estate broker, fraudulently engineered the sale of her apartment last week. You stole, what was it? $480,000. Alicia started to speak. Chad, no, it wasn't. I'm not finished, he snapped, and she fell silent. You took that stolen $480,000, Chad stated, and you and Alicia immediately funneled it into a series of non-refundable deposits. For what, Alicia? A $300,000 wedding for us? Alicia was shaking her head, silent tears now streaming down her face. Baby, please, it's not like that. And now, Chad said, hitting the final point, because Imani, the original ATM, has stopped refilling your account. Your own home is in foreclosure. The $500,000 note is due. The stolen money is gone, and you are, for all intents and purposes, completely and totally bankrupt. You're going to be homeless. Is that the gist of it? Did I miss anything? No one spoke. The lobby was as quiet as a tomb. The only sound was my father's ragged breathing. Alicia took a desperate step toward him. She tried to grab his arm. Chad, baby, listen to me. It's her fault. She's the one who did this. She set us up. It's a family misunderstanding. Tell him, Mum. Tell him it's not true. Tell him we have assets. Tell him you're a top real estate broker. My mother looked at Chad, her eyes wide with a desperate, animalistic plea. Please, Chad, it's a cash flow problem. It's not. Chad looked at her. Then he looked down at Alicia. He looked at her hand, the one with his 5-carat diamond on it, clutching his blazer, and with 2 fingers he very calmly, very deliberately, plucked her hand off of his jacket as if he were touching something filthy. Alicia, he said, his voice completely dead. You told me your family was established. You told me your mother was one of the top brokers in Atlanta. You told me your father was a retired executive. You told me your family owned multiple properties and had significant generational wealth. He shook his head, a small, almost amused smile on his face. Assets, Alicia. Your mother is a con artist who just got her own family foreclosed on. Your father is a weeping mess on the floor of a lobby. And you're a greedy, screaming child who just got caught. Chad, no, Alicia screamed. I love you. Don't do this. He just looked at her. Love? You don't even know what that is. You just wanted the party. You were willing to build our entire marriage on a foundation of theft and lies. He straightened his blazer. He took a step back, putting distance between himself and all of them. "I can't," he said with a simple final shrug. "I can't marry into this circus, this white-collar crime syndicate. My family's name, the Thompson name, will not be associated with fraud or theft or, frankly, this level of pathetic desperation." He reached into his pocket. He pulled out his phone. "My lawyer," he said, "will be in contact with your mother regarding any deposits made in my name. We will be clawing back whatever we can." He then looked at Alicia. His eyes were completely devoid of emotion. "And Alicia, my attorney will also be in communication with you regarding the ring. I anticipate its return in its original packaging by tomorrow morning. Do you comprehend my directive?" Alicia simply gaped at him, her mouth agape, yet no utterance escaped her lips. He offered no courtesy of awaiting a response. With the distinct click of his expensive footwear on the tiled floor, he turned and strode directly through the glass portals. He did not glance back. He simply departed, leaving them in his wake. For precisely 5 seconds, Alicia remained motionless. She merely observed the door as it swung closed. And then the sound that emerged from her was not a whimper. It was a guttural roar, a profound, agonizing, primal sound of absolute and utter devastation. She had not merely lost a fiancé, she had forfeited the ring. She had lost the $300,000 celebration. She had surrendered her social standing. She had renounced the Thompson lineage. She had lost everything. She crumpled. It was not a mere stumble. Her limbs failed her, and she descended to the grimy lobby floor, clad in her opulent red gown, her cries and fists pounding against the ground. My mother, Denise, and my father, Marcus, stood like statues. They merely stared. They stared at the vacant expanse where Chad had previously stood. They stared at their golden child, who was now a writhing, shrieking heap upon the floor. They had lost their residence, they had squandered their fortune, and now they had forfeited their singular great legacy. They were utterly, completely ruined. I observed them on the grainy, monochromatic display. I witnessed their unraveling. I watched as all their deceptions, their aspirations, and their cruelty imploded within the lobby of my modest new dwelling. And with my finger I depressed the termination button on the intercom. The transmission abruptly ceased. The lobby and all its cacophony vanished. All that remained was the sound of my own tranquil, measured respiration. I stood there in my desolate new abode long after the image of my fractured family had dissipated from the security monitor. The intercom remained silent. The lobby, I surmised, was presently a scene of recriminations and despair. The security attendant, Mike, would undoubtedly be earning his wages this evening, likely tasked with escorting them from the premises. The surge of adrenaline that had coursed through me for the past hour began to recede, leaving behind a frigid, placid calm. I approached the window of my inexpensive rental unit. I did not cast my gaze down at the lobby. I looked out upon the Atlanta skyline, a metropolis I had subdued, a city where I had cultivated a life, a profession, and a sanctuary that had been pilfered. My family, in their avarice, had attempted to dismantle the very individual who sustained them, and in doing so, they had orchestrated the calamitous descent of their own domicile, the one situated at 142 Magnolia Drive, directly upon themselves. My mobile device vibrated on the kitchen counter. My initial presumption was that it was one of them, a new number, a friend's handset, another endeavor to plead or threaten. However, the designation displayed on the screen caused my heart to seize. T.K. James, Esquire, my legal counsel. I answered the call. My hand remained perfectly steady. Tariq Imani. His voice was not placid. It was electric. He sounded invigorated. He sounded impressed. "You will scarcely credit the conversation I have just concluded. I executed our agreed upon strategy. I dispatched the formal declaration of intent to Truist Bank, and I inquired, and I could discern his smile. The hornet's nest has been officially disturbed. Their entire legal division is engulfed in a 4-alarm conflagration. You are correct, Amani. You are 100% correct. Tell me, I prompted. Very well, Tariq responded, drawing a breath. So, I dispatched the correspondence. I notified them that you, as the de facto payer for the Magnolia Drive property over 96 consecutive months, were discontinuing all remittances. And then I elucidated the rationale. I appended, he continued, a facsimile of the closing statement, the one you unearthed from the disposition of your Buckhead condominium, the one identifying your mother, Denise Washington, as the presiding real estate agent. Amani, the bank's legal representatives, did not merely perceive a default, they recognized a colossal illuminated red beacon of liability. Contemplate the situation, he urged, his voice accelerating. Your mother is not merely a patron, she is a licensed real estate broker. She leveraged her professional accreditation to perpetrate fraud. She fraudulently divested an asset, your condominium, and in doing so, she directly precipitated another asset, their asset, the Magnolia residence, into default. She has contravened approximately 6 distinct federal banking covenants. She has violated her fiduciary obligation. She has exposed Truist Bank to an immense litigation, not solely from your perspective, but also from the State Real Estate Commission. They are paralyzed by the prospect of the discovery process. They are apprehensive of any further revelations this inquiry might unearth concerning your mother's professional conduct. I listened intently. He spoke the truth. My mother believed herself to be astute, but she had been careless. She had conflated her professional existence with her personal transgressions. They do not merely desire this matter to dissipate, Imani. Tariq stated they require it buried by yesterday. Consequently, he continued, a vice president from their legal department contacted me an hour ago. He was exceptionally amenable. He evinced a desire to negotiate. He wished to resolve this unfortunate familial discord swiftly and discreetly. What character of arrangement? I inquired. The bank perceives you, Imani. They acknowledge your 96 consecutive payments. They observe your income. They regard you as the dependable party. They recognize your parents as the substantial, imminent risk they represent. Therefore, they are extending an offer, an extraordinary offer. Tariq inhaled deeply. They are forthwith initiating the foreclosure proceedings on 142 Magnolia Drive. They will proceed with the eviction of Marcus, Denise, and Alicia. Period. And they are officially extending to you and you exclusively the prerogative to assume the mortgage. I remain silent. Assume the mortgage. You comprehend my assertion, he stated. You merely step in. You assume the outstanding principal balance. $510,000. The residence is yours. The title is transferred. Your parents are ousted. You are reinstated. It is an unblemished resolution. It is an unmitigated triumph, Amani. You acquire the domicile. You attain retribution. I retreated to the window. I gazed downward. I could discern the very edge of the lobby entrance. I observed my father, Marcus, a diminutive, broken figure, being partially supported by my mother. As they stumbled out onto the curb, Alicia trailed behind them, her face buried in her hands. They appeared destitute. I contemplated the proposition, a $510,000 mortgage. I possessed the financial capacity. I could assume the loan. I could secure the domicile. However, it felt incomplete. It felt as though they were still evading full accountability. The funds, my funds, the $480,000 they had derided. The capital that was purportedly designated for Alicia's extravagant wedding reception. It had vanished. "No," I articulated into the receiver. Tariq was taken aback. "No? What do you mean, no?" "Imani, this represents the victory. This is the objective. Embrace the triumph." "It is not the triumph, Tariq," I countered. My voice was quiet, yet it possessed the unyielding strength of steel. "It is a victory. I do not merely desire the domicile. I demand the restitution of my funds. The principle that I genuinely value is that. The domicile. The domicile serves merely as a point of leverage." "Amani, I fail to comprehend. How do you intend to recover the $480,000? That necessitates a distinct legal action against your mother. That was our agreed upon strategy. It could protracted for years." "No, that is not the case," I stated. The strategy materialized instantaneously. It was calculated and it was flawless. It is not a separate lawsuit. It is a single, convoluted, fraudulent transaction. And the bank is ensnared directly within its midst. "What course of action do you propose?" Tariq inquired. "Herein lies your directive," I articulated. "You will recontact that vice president. You will express your gratitude for his exceptionally generous proposition to permit me to assume his $510,000 loan. And you will inform him that I am not amenable." Tariq remained silent. "You will apprise him that I aspire to accomplish something superior. I do not wish to assume his loan. I wish to procure it. I wish to acquire the obligation, the complete $510,000 in liquid assets." His entire predicament resolved from his desk by Friday. Tariq sputtered. "In cash, Amani. You do not possess $510,000. You just informed me that they absconded with your funds." "Precisely," I affirmed, and for the first instance in weeks, a smile graced my lips. A genuine, cool, dispassionate smile. "That is the leverage, Tariq. That is the checkmate. You will inform that amiable vice president that I am eager to facilitate the disappearance of his predicament. I will electronically transfer the sum by the week's conclusion. However, regrettably, my readily available capital is presently somewhat encumbered. My $480,000 is inconveniently held within the banking account of a non-refundable wedding venue." A transaction that his institution is now fully cognizant was financed through fraudulent means. I allowed the implication to settle. "You will inform him," I continued, "that if he desires his $510,000, he must assist me in recovering my $480,000. The bank possesses authority that I do not," I mused aloud. "They possess the capacity to contact the title company that insured the fraudulent sale. They can engage the new purchasers. They can issue threats of federal wire fraud charges. They can instigate the revocation of my mother's real estate license by 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. They can exert pressure that I, as a spurned daughter, am incapable of applying. They must annul my mother's initial transgression so that I may possess the requisite capital to resolve their subsequent infraction." There ensued a protracted, profound silence on the other end of the line. I simply waited. Ultimately, I detected a low whistle. "My goodness, Imani." And then Tariq commenced to chuckle. It was not a polite chuckle. It was a deep, unadulterated manifestation of pure, impressed, professional admiration. "You are not presenting them with a compromise," he declared, his smile evident in his tone. "You are not even engaged in negotiation." "You," Tariq pronounced, "are an absolute predator. You are supplying them with a loaded firearm, explicitly directing their aim, and compelling them to undertake all the onerous labor for you, merely for the privilege of permitting you to compensate them." He chuckled once more. "I am captivated. I am utterly captivated. I shall initiate the communication forthwith. This is not a legal dispute. This is a strategic game of chess, and you have just declared checkmate." 30 days. 30 days sufficed for an entire empire to crumble and for a new one to ascend. The concluding tableau did not unfold within a dramatic judicial chamber. It transpired within Tariq's serene professional office, situated on the 25th floor, commanding a panoramic vista of the city. Tariq's strategy. My strategy had materialized with a perfection that surpassed my most ambitious imaginings. The bank, Truist, confronted with a colossal, multi-million-dollar litigation and a federal inquiry into one of its favored real estate brokers, did not merely capitulate. They retaliated. They performed the actions that I, as a daughter, could not. They unleashed their entire legal contingent. It was not a negotiation. It was an annihilation. They contacted my mother, Denise. They apprised her that her license was undergoing immediate scrutiny for ethical transgressions and professional malfeasance. They contacted the IRS to flag the fraudulent transaction. They contacted the State Real Estate Commission. Subsequently, they pursued the Capitol. They contacted the St. Regis. They contacted the couture dress shop. They contacted the florist. They informed every single purveyor that the $300,000 deposits they had received constituted the proceeds of wire fraud and were subject to immediate restitution. Chad's family, perceiving an opportunity to sever their respectable name from the scandal, aligned themselves with the bank's endeavors, threatening their own legal actions against the vendors for accepting illicit funds. The St. Regis, facing a legal confrontation with a major financial institution and the Thompson family, folded within less than an hour. The $300,000 deposit was repatriated. The other vendors, terrified, followed suit. The residual $180,000. My parents were compelled to procure that sum themselves. The bank granted them 48 hours. I ascertained through Tariq that my father was obliged to liquidate his entire retirement savings. My mother was compelled to liquidate whatever equities she possessed. They were utterly depleted, down to their final penny, merely to reinstate the complete sum. And now here I was in Tariq's office. He slid 2 documents across the polished mahogany table. The first was a cashier's check made payable to me, Amani J. Washington. The sum was $480,000, my money. And this, Tariq stated, sliding over the second, considerably more substantial document, is the prize. It was the deed. The bank, in its profound gratitude for my resolution of their legal quandary, had sold me the obligation on 142 Magnolia Drive for a considerably, significantly discounted sum. I had just acquired my childhood residence, the asset for which my mother had sacrificed me, utilizing the very funds she had purloined from me. I procured the pen. It was a weighty, expensive writing instrument. I inscribed my appellation, Imani J. Washington, proprietor. I possessed my funds. I owned my former apartment, which I had just reclaimed, and now I owned their residence. I had, in essence, become a real estate magnate. Tariq shook his head. You did not merely triumph, Imani, he stated, his smile broad. You purchased the entire stadium. I drove to Alpharetta. It was the 30th day of the month, the designated expiration date for the bank's eviction notice. The domicile, my domicile, presented a different aspect. The meticulously maintained lawn was somewhat overgrown. A utilitarian U-Haul rental truck was parked in an awkward position in the driveway, encroaching partially onto the grass. I parked my vehicle on the street and ascended the stone walkway. The initial individual I encountered was my father, Marcus. He was attempting to maneuver a substantial box labeled kitchen down the front steps. He was enfeebled. The box slipped from his grasp. He made no attempt to catch it. He simply permitted it to descend, shattering the contents within. He uttered a low, weak curse and then sank onto the bottom step. Clad in his wrinkled, soiled attire, cradling his greying head in his hands, a man utterly vanquished. The front door creaked open, and my sister Alicia emerged. If my father was a phantom, Alicia was a spectre. She was nearly unrecognizable. The celebrated influencer was gone. Her hair was pulled back into a greasy, dishevelled knot. She wore old sweatpants and a stained college t-shirt. Her complexion was pallid, her face puffy, and entirely devoid of its former radiance. She regarded me, her eyes merely dull. A dull, lifeless, utterly exhausted animosity. She carried a box containing her former high school prom trophies. She uttered not a word. She simply deposited the box on the lawn and retreated indoors. And then my mother Denise emerged, clutching a lamp. She froze atop the highest step upon beholding me. She remained immobile, the lamp in her hand, the erstwhile queen of Alpharetta, the mistress of appearances, the woman who had smirked at me in the restaurant restroom. She was now merely a fatigued, middle-aged woman in a stained tracksuit facing eviction. I remained silent. I stood upon my walkway. I observed them. I observed the remnants of the family that had sought to annihilate me. Finally, Denise placed the lamp down. She descended the steps slowly, halting approximately 10 feet from my position. Her eyes were vacant. There were no tears remaining. "You have arrived," she stated. Her voice was a dry, rasping whisper. "Are you here to witness? Are you here to ensure our departure? Are you going to compel us onto the streets? Amani?" I regarded her. I recalled her words spoken in the restroom. "This time it is you." I recalled her laughter on the telephone, expressing gratitude for the gift. I strode past her. I offered no reply. I ascended the steps and entered the foyer of my new residence. I surveyed the surroundings. "It requires a fresh coat of paint," I remarked to myself. I turned and re-emerged, pausing directly before her. She was observing me, her expression a mask of terrified, bewildered consternation. I reached into my new, expensive leather handbag, the one I had acquired for myself with my own reclaimed capital. I withdrew a single folded document. "I shall not compel you to depart," I announced. A sudden, pathetic, desperate hope flooded her countenance. She actually took a step toward me, her hand extending. "Oh, Amani," she breathed. "Darling, I knew it. I knew you could not. I knew you still held affection for us." I elevated the paper and she halted. "This," I stated, "is a lease agreement." The hope on her face evaporated, replaced by a stunned, hollow bewilderment. A what? A lease agreement?" I repeated, my voice clear and professional. "You wish to remain in my residence? You will remit rent, $5,000 per month. That figure is marginally below the prevailing market rate for Alpharetta, but I am feeling magnanimous." Alicia, who had just reappeared at the doorway, emitted a strangled scoff. "We do not possess $5,000, you witch." "That," I stated without even glancing at her, "is not my concern. I am addressing you, Mother. It is a month-to-month tenancy. The first and last month's rent, in addition to a security deposit, is due by the commencement of next week. That totals $15,000 for ingress." Denise was utterly speechless. 15, we have nothing. We possess nothing. You are aware that you appropriated. I did not appropriate anything. I reclaimed what was rightfully mine. You will need to ascertain a resolution. You are a premier real estate broker, are you not, Mother? You possess knowledge of these processes. You are intimately familiar with the legislation. You will find your footing. You invariably do. I extended the document towards her. She merely stared at it. "Welcome to the reality of existence," I remarked. "I understand Alicia is seeking employment. Perhaps she can commence submitting applications. That represents a substantial sum of rent to cover." I dropped the lease agreement at her feet. I turned, proceeded down the pathway, entered my vehicle and departed. The scene undergoes a transformation. It is 1 week hence. I am within the domicile, my domicile. I am situated in the spacious, sun-drenched upstairs chamber that was formerly Alicia's. The frilly pink furnishings have been supplanted by my sleek, professional standing desk. This is my new administrative centre. I am engaged in a video conference, but on this occasion, I am the one presiding over the assembly. I have just inaugurated my own UI/UX design consultancy. My former clientele have remained loyal. I am my own employer. I conclude the call and observe the exterior panorama through the window. The lawn is being meticulously manicured. I have engaged a professional service. My family harbored an obsession with legacy. They were preoccupied with the perceptions of the neighbors, with the inscription on the wedding invitations, with the honor of the family name. They were so engrossed in constructing a facade that they neglected to inspect the foundational structure. They never comprehended that it was I, for 8 protracted years, who was surreptitiously bolstering the beams. They attempted to liquidate my future to settle their past obligations. They absconded with a $480,000 condominium from me, and in reciprocal exchange, I acquired a $510,000 residence from them. I commandeered an entire real estate portfolio. The most profound vengeance is not invariably about total devastation. At times, it entails complete acquisition. It involves embodying the institution of the bank. It entails assuming the role of the proprietor. And the most gratifying vengeance of all is presently residing in your new office, within your new domicile, holding the deposited check for $15,000. From the very individuals who endeavored to render you destitute, they have devised a solution. It appears they were in dire need of a place of abode. Herein lies the erudite lesson that can be gleaned from this narrative. Your intrinsic value is never defined by those who fail to appreciate it. Imani's family regarded her as a resource to be exploited, never realizing she constituted the clandestine bedrock upon which they were sustained. Her fortitude transcended mere accomplishment. It resided in her profound insight. While they meticulously planned a celebration, she held the key to their very survival. Emotional independence is paramount, but financial leverage is the instrument that secures the restoration of justice. They pilfered her condominium, yet by comprehending their critical vulnerability, she reclaimed an entire empire. Should this narrative resonate with you, kindly indicate your approval and subscribe. Have you ever encountered a scenario necessitating a choice between preserving your family and safeguarding your own well-being? Please share your experiences in the comment section below.